My pacing is there's too many syllables. My pacing is off.
Yeah. Well,
I was getting caught on saying welcome or welcome back for some reason. Should I do welcome back? We welcoming people back?
That's a good question. Let's do it. Why not? I think that feels like a little more inviting. Welcome is an inviting term, but welcome back is like, oh, you belong here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is home.
And I think you, listener, do belong here. So welcome back to the Unwritten Earth Symposium podcast. I am here with my good friend Epadiah Ravishal to talk about games and game design and related topics.
And I'm here with my good friend Nathan Paoletta to talk about the same. So I think it's a wonderful coincidence.
It's good. Our agenda has been planned.
Has it, though?
We have ended up doing more planning than I think we anticipated, in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if you've been with us since the first couple episodes, I think you've heard us tighten up a little bit. Maybe you haven't. I don't know. I feel like we've tightened up a little bit and here's what our episode is actually going to be about.
It's inevitable, I think, that we'll either tighten up or die. Those are the two options.
Well, speaking of those two options.
Right, yes.
We are recording this on February 1st, not January 1st, as I was typing into our notes.
2025.
2025. This is...
the cursed year.
We entered the cursed year with our cursed episode. You know how people... there's a thing on social media near the end of the year of being like January 2024, December 2024, and a fun picture and then everything is on fire picture. People started doing that in this month. I started seeing those go around. It's bad out there, folks. It's been a bad time.
We're currently in a fascist takeover of the government in the country in which we're broadcasting from, so that's great. And that's disrupted our lives. We don't want to get too much into it.
Yeah. And correct me if any of this is not salient to you, but I'm fine. My family is generally fine, but between some family members, friends of mine, people in my life, there are a lot of people, trans people in particular, that are really scared right now, and it's really hard to continue doing fun escapist things when there's this constant threat that is just not just looming, that there's this constant threat that is actively pushing into pretty much every aspect of, a well-considered life. We're not
here with answers. We are, in the grand scheme of things, relatively comfortable, but our loved ones are, and just we care about people, and that's
and apparently that's rare and unusual, but here we are.
So here we are. And so that has had a little bit of an impact on our productivity, our ability to churn.
I think I phrased it, and this is usually in a slightly different context, but I've been pretty down bad. I've not been doing great. And that has effects on what we're going to be talking about and doing stuff. I think there's just a lot of uncertainty. Are we going to be able to do the things we want to do this year? Or are there going to be huge economic changes that are going to make the entire hobby games industry a smoking crater? It really could go either way. Who knows?
Yeah, one or the other. So what we're going to do here is we're going to proceed with this episode, and as far as we can go, as if we weren't in this horrible situation.
Yeah. You still, we still want to do the things we want to do.
Yeah.
Paralysis isn't really a great place to be. Moving is better than not moving.
Yes.
So we're going to keep moving. But there's been a level of I don't want to just not acknowledge the fact that things are the way they are, because that's starting to feel slightly disingenuous, even though it's not what we're here to talk about. But it's important.
This is not fine, but we're still going to.
Yeah, because what else are we going to do?
What else?
We've made ourselves completely unemployable in any other field, so we do have to continue doing some of this. As long as there is an economy, so what else are we going to do? Epi did a very good job of making clear that we should not dwell. So that's done. We're moving on. But one particular effect is that it means I did not do my homework.
Yes. Just a quick reminder, what the homework was, we were tasked with finding a game that would teach our respective moms how to role play, or at least what role playing is, with the certain caveats, like it couldn't be games that we had written. And I guess, I mean, like I also included like games that Emily wrote, but then when I looked at a lot of the games that Emily wrote, I'm like, I'm not playing that with my mom. So we're going to set that off till next time.
Yeah.
And that's great. I'm actually going to talk to my mom about it. Actually, that's what I'm going to do between now and next time. No, wait, I shouldn't make promises on the air. Who knows what's going to happen between now and then.
That does give enough time to do something like maybe talk to your mom about it if you think that would be a fun thing to do.
Call your mom is what I'm saying. If you can, if that's a thing that's possible and also healthy for you to do, and
welcome. This is probably a good time.
Yeah.
So we're not pushing off homework. So also we're going to push off assigning homework. We've had a couple more ideas come in about assigning homework.
Yeah.
So here's another good window if you have a thought on how we should assign our homework going forward. Hit us up in the Discord.
Yeah. If this is your first time listening, welcome. The homework basically is just a game that is a game from our own collection that we're going to present, like some way to discover a game within our own collections,
right? To revisit and pull out the tantalizing arcane gems of wisdom that lie within.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I'll say also we're on Blue Sky, so you can also Blue Sky us.
Blue Skus. I think they call them skeets.
They call them skeets, but that as a millennial, that makes me feel gross. So blue.
Give me a blue ski.
Yeah, you can give me a blue ski. That's a very nice Midwestern.
And have me a nice cold blue ski.
Yeah, you can send us a nice cold blue ski over at unwrittenearths.bluesky.social, I believe.
A nice frothy head and
I don't know. The frothy head also starts to get into uncomfortable territory. But you don't need to be part of the Discord or send an email. You can send that is an active account that we do post from and check. So you can let us know if you have a fun idea for our homework over on the fine service of Blue Sky until, whatever happens to that happens. Because who knows? Anything could happen to anything at any time. Speaking of things happening at any time, Epi, you have an idea that I know nothing about, which is this Groundhog Day convention idea.
Right. So we're recording the day before Groundhog Day.
Attorneys General?
Yes.
Or Groundhog?
Groundhog. I've had this idea for decades, and I'm not going to do it. So I'm just going to put it out there for anybody who enjoys organizing conventions. You little freak, you.
We love you. Why do you do it? But we love you.
Exactly. Here we go. It's a role-playing game convention, hopefully on Groundhog Day. On Groundhog Day. Oh, but like around Groundhog Day. Based on the concept that comes out of the film Groundhog's Day, right? Where our protagonist relives the same day over and over and over again until he learns his lesson about love and life and whatever. Like that, you've seen the film or you haven't. It's fine. What I think would be fun would be a convention in which you have a scenario that is the only scenario that's played, but it's played with different games. And so you just like go through the day playing out the exact same scenario, but each time with like a different game system just to see like the wild differences between them. Like what do these systems encourage?
Like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and Labyrinth Lord and
okay, but like we can go a little bit more
into the odd.
Yeah. I mean, we could go Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
I kid.
Second edition.
Yeah, second edition.
Right?
The good edition.
And then
or the bad edition, depending on your preferences.
we'll go a few years earlier, and we'll do the Bullwinkle and Rocky role-playing party game. And we'll go a few...
And then the Dallas role-playing game.
The Dallas role playing game, but just as long as it's all TSR, I think that's important. Like you know what I'm getting at, though, right? Like I think it would be.
No, I kid.
I don't know why I suddenly like we got to be serious about this thing. I think it would be kind of fun to just like have like a you would to design it might want to know what all the systems are ahead or like have a good core set of systems so you have a scenario that would be plausible in most of them and then let people riff on that like if you're like somebody's like, oh, I really want to do this as like I'm looking at my shelf here trying to find a nice touchstone. But like every game that comes to my brain is one where I'm like, do people know Diaspora? Do people know Nine Worlds? Do people know Jade Claw? Like I don't know, but it'd be fun.
Yeah. There's two directions, right? One is like you make like as the convention organizer, I suppose. Yeah. You build the scenario and maybe you task people with like, okay, pick a game that you can play with the scenario. Or as the convention organizer, you say, okay, tell me the game you want to run, and I will build a scenario that fits all of the games that everyone wants to bring, which is probably more of a challenge. I mean, depends on your community, I guess.
Our imaginations are elastic enough so that if somebody's like, if the scenario feels like a classic RPG horror mystery thing, and then like you toss it at like one of the many Marvel role-playing games, it'll be fine if people had superpowers. You just because you would just like if you're like, okay, here's we're going to take this episode of Scooby-Doo and you're going to play the Scooby characters trying to solve this mystery, and now you're going to do it with Marvel superhero role-playing game, the old one, and now you're going to do it with like breaking the ice, right.
Are you envisioning something where like if I like this is a one day like a JiffyCon kind of thing, right? Are you envisioning like I attend this and I like play like a game in the morning and a game in the afternoon, and those are going to be two different systems, but I'm going to be doing the same scenario over?
Yes. Okay. I think it's fun if the players play the same scenario over and over, but like in different systems with different combinations of players. And just it's an opportunity that we have, right? Like it's a thing you could do with role-playing games that just, as far as I know, hasn't been done.
There's an it's an idea that now I'm like, okay, here's all these other things you could do.
Right. Yeah. No,
you could do something where like the first, because there's such a variety of games, you could do something where like the first session is all like it's the same scenario, but the first session is all like world building and like context building games. So like Microscope or like did you say Street Magic or these other games that are like about like let's build the structure of what you then will play, and then the afternoon session is people are all going to be playing and then you play with I don't know, what games do people like?
We don't need to keep coming up with example games. I realize that we're just going to end up listing all the games in our collection, but yeah.
So if in the morning you do a Microscope game of like world building, and then in the afternoon you play the same scenario with Necronautilus, right? Like is there some like a correspondence there, but it's all the same vision of like, here's the scenario, here are the characters, here's the action, but then these games are coming at it from like the outside in, or building out and then playing inside could be one way to do it. That might be more fun if you had the same group in both. Well, what you're talking about is a little more of a like, let's just bounce around and see what happens, which would also be fun.
Yeah, I mean, like my convention scope is actually not necessary. Like you could just have a group of friends that play the same scenario.
Oh, sure.
Like in several, like, I don't know why I haven't done that. I just realized that that's a thing that I'm capable of doing. I can't organize a convention. I don't have those skills, but like
the convention scenario is fun because part of the fun is the Brownian motion of like people playing in different games, and then like the evening hangout time is like talking about all the weird stuff that happened in people's games.
Yeah. Like, what did your Thelma do or whatever? Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, in a broader sense, that's a thing that I've been kind of craving in games. Like I've encountered it a little bit with I'm gonna murder the title of this game, and I'm the one who wrote the title, The Dread Geish of Duke Voku.
Something like
Let's say that. Let's say that's how that word's pronounced. Geese, Geish, whatever. It's out there. Anyways, the Duke Voku, I love hearing from people who play it and them telling me about their Duke Voku.
Mm-hmm.
The premise to this game is that you're all, it's a sword and sorcery game. You're all I can't remember what, maybe you're just called companions, but you have willingly placed yourself under a magic spell to be loyal to this Duke, who is just like almost like an empty piece of armor that like I just kind of like,
yeah, it's a cipher.
Yeah. And you go out adventuring with him, and in doing so, like a lot of bad things happen, but it's really fun seeing how people talk about like what their Duke is like, and this is a I'm talking way too much about this game, and I apologize. This is a hack of dread that works in a powered by the apocalypse style. So you have moves and things like that, and each character is like a very like a playbook. So they have a very like not well defined, because you get to define parts of the character. You get to define the character, but like they have these sort of archetypes. So it's fun to hear how like these different people interact with the Duke. And anyways, one of the joys of when that game first came out for me was just hearing from people about the different Dukes in their worlds.
Sure. Yeah.
And I mean, like, again, that's a thing that role-playing games can do that I don't feel like you can't fully explore it, but I don't think it's been explored to an extent that I would like to see it happen. Like I would love to see like certain characters that are just, because they're role-playing game characters, they're open to everyone's interpretation and seeing different people's interpretations of them. You might get that with like Strahd or one of the classic D&D. Well, anyways,
I feel like there's a little bit of that in the early Apocalypse World days, because one of the small innovations there was like the name lists, right? Where like where like the playbooks all have like just choices of names, and so when you talk to people, either just like talking about their game or like. Or sharing stories or like whatever, there would be these touch points where it would be like, there was one that I feel like that like always came up, but like, my game, like my heart holder was like Skinner, and so my Skinner was this, and someone's like, my heart holder was also Skinner. Like there was this kind of low key language that got shared, because there were like certain names that people would pick like all the time. And then there's also names that like for the MC would often think, I don't remember if they're in the book or not. It's been so long now that I don't remember, but you know what I'm talking about. There were a couple specific references that were not a character in the world, but was like, if you picked this name for your, driver or whatever, that kind of meant like that you were interested in this kind of character.
Yeah. And it just became kind of like a multiverse of different versions of that. Yeah. And that part. Yeah. I mean, I should lament that stuff doesn't exist, because it does exist. But I think like, I do think it's a strength of the genre that like
you could design
comic books kind of have it. Like you have different comic writers and artists take on superheroes. But it's not as wide open as that. Sure. Like it's not as wide. It's not both personal and
shared.
I'm not sharing this in joke with this comic artist. Like, I don't know what I'm getting at here. The point is, I think role-playing games have some neat things.
Yeah. And so if someone out there wants to do the Groundhog Day convention, let us know. It sounds fun.
Yeah, it does. Give me an invite. But you're welcome to it. Like,
ideas are free.
Yeah, ideas are free.
Part of what we get to do here is see if we can get other people to do things that we kind of want to exist in the world, but aren't going to do ourselves.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. I feel like that was a good one. Good. I feel like I should be celebrated for that one.
You should be.
So, part of our self-described agenda here is to trick each other into designing a game.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been doing a lot of groundwork, homework, and, getting our feet under us with this whole endeavor. But we have yet to do any tricking.
Right. Or have we? Because I just want to point out that there is Pet Crimes.
That's true. Pet Crimes is in progress.
We are working on our Adventure and Hobbyist Annual 2025.
Mm-hmm. Which I was going to say is, thematically is a group of scenarios that could all be played with different games.
Right. Yes. So
maybe you are making your own Groundhog Day infrastructure.
Okay, so there's this thing that's happening, right? Like where, and this is a thing that Nathan and I are both very prone to. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here.
Mm.
But we'll do a thing and we'll be like, hey, let's do this thing for fun, and then we'll turn it into a business because that's fun.
At least nominally a business.
So I just want to state, I don't think we've done exactly what we set out to do about challenging ourselves, but we should keep an eye on the fact that we will continue to keep making games.
Right. So
and we will not count those as things that we've tricked each other into doing because they're serious business.
Sure. I think, so going way back, one of the originating points of this podcast, in addition to how are we going to have an excuse to talk all the time if we don't have a podcast?
Right. Yes.
Because, friends can't just call each other or whatever. Was, we talk all the time. We have this other creative thing that we're doing, the 200 a Day podcast. And we're both game designers, and we both talk about game design on that podcast.
Yeah.
Someone somewhere has probably been like, so are you guys ever going to talk about game design?
Right.
Or maybe make a game? And so one of the originating points for this show was like, hey, let's do a show where we do design a game together. And like with most creative endeavors, that was an origin point that then got us to where we are, which is not actually about the origin point,
right?
Necessarily.
You need the initial kayfabe to get you going, the alibi.
Yes, I'd say more of an alibi than kayfabe. But the point is, as you say, we could and probably should design a game.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Pet Crimes is something that we're designing together, but that's also a little, I don't know, maybe that's it. Maybe we're doing Pet Crimes. Maybe that's the game we're designing.
No, but I think here's the thing, right? I think that the initial idea in my head, I think, was we would keep presenting things that we thought the other might grab onto.
Sure, yeah.
And it's fine if the other doesn't grab onto them, because we're just presenting them. It's out there. Yeah. Other people can grab onto them. That's fine. That's actually the goal, right? Mm-hmm. So to that extent, I think we should just keep presenting things that are like, hey, what about this?
Yeah.
Through the lens of game design, and just to see if the other is like, yes. Mm-hmm. And if the other's like, oh, that's interesting, that's fine. We didn't do it that time. We, keep going. But I think what is likely to happen between you and I is that at some point we'll be like, what about this? What about a game where you put your pets on trial?
Right.
And we'll be like, yeah, and then we'll do it and just forget that we've done it, that we've challenged each other, and I think that's fine too.
I guess there was an idea at one point of as one of these segments being a challenge. Here's a challenge. Here's a game design challenge.
Yeah.
Can you do one early one? And this is the thing. I think the problem for me is scope, right? What does that actually mean, and what is it actually asking the other person to do? Because an early example that I had was neither of us really designs games with a lot of setting, original, make 'em ups, not necessarily fantasy, but a setting that is not either genre, sword and sorcery, or
just whatever that invokes,
or the real world, but maybe a little different, or whatever. So a challenge would be what would it look like if we were let's design a setting? which I think is interesting, but is a little too big of a scope for like a segment of a podcast.
Yes. Well, okay, but can we talk about this one?
Let's talk about it.
Okay, yeah.
That's what we're here to do.
Yeah. Because I think you're right. Like, looking back on our oeuvre, I think you and I tend to go like, here's a conceit, or here's a concept, here's a genre, or a style of story, or a type of tale, and then here are the tools, dear players, that you can use to turn that into your setting, right? Like, some of that for me comes from like, I have over the years very much enjoyed the, as we say, lonely fun of reading like thick role-playing tomes full of setting material. Like, we were talking about a couple episodes back, Hunter, The Reckoning, right? In the whole World of Darkness, those books were just filled with setting material, and just like all the cultures of the vampires and all the cultures of the werewolves and whatnot. I have very fond memories and super enjoyed reading through those books. Oftentimes when the rubber hit the road and I came to play that, it was always very frustrating to me when either I knew more than everyone else about the setting.
Sure. And
people weren't, or the opposite. And somebody else knew more about the setting than I did, and I just felt left out. So I think that is an unconscious impulse in mine to have designed games that were like, no, you got to bring your own setting. Like, I'm not going to,
right.
Which I don't like. I would love to be able to write a setting. It's not that I don't like. I think I really liked a lot of the tools that I've come up with.
Yeah.
Famously, Annalise has the. I stole it for swords. What is the
claims?
The claims? Thank you. Yes. But that's like a setting building.
Yes. Yeah. And that game. This is my my vampire horror game where you play all the interests of, or victims, or servants, or people in the aura of a central vampire figure. But there are different, I mean, you can start the game in a couple different ways. One way to start the game is like, everything's obscured in fog. You just make characters just kind of from whole cloth. And then as you play, you discover where you are and when and like what's going on. That's hard mode. Like, usually you generally want to like have like a pregame like discussion of, is this going to be like Dracula, or is it going to be like Anne Rice, style, like kind of thing, or is it going to be like historical, etc. Like, you can play on a space station. You can pick ahead of time, but you can also play with just starting with your characters and then just discovering everything as you go. Which is an ultimate expression of my thing, which is that I am lazy and writing setting is hard.
Well, see, I mean, that's the other bit, right? Like, coming back around to this phenomenon of like, we were talking about how we haven't been challenging, or we haven't been tricking each other into doing it. The annual is almost all setting.
That's true.
It's and I've been enjoying writing it, but like, it is hard. It's hard to sit there and think, divorced from any game,
right?
Like, what is this scenario? What is this character's job in this scenario? How do I anticipate players interacting with them? How can I help let the person running it know that they're okay if these interactions don't, like a lot of things that are like, writing settings is hard. Writing role-playing games is hard, but like, we all find different speed bumps, different things that kind of slow us down. And that said, one thing I really, really love about indie games, and this is a horrible generalization, but like, a lot of indie games just do a good job of being like, we all know what a Scarecrow and Mrs. King episode should be like, so let's start with that, and then go on to,
or giving you the tools to be like, when you start, like, I mean, this is what like Powered by the Apocalypse is really good at, right? Like, by playing the game, the tools that the game gives you give you genre tools when you play the game, then you're doing the things that one would expect a post-apocalyptic game to have in it, right?
There's a thing about I've said this in other places, but like read a situation in an apocalypse world is this your notice roll. You're aware you roll to see the world, right? And it gives you questions that you can ask depending on, like what you rolled or whatever. And long ago, I told Vincent, I was like, that's the thing that's from like that changed role-playing games for me in my brain. Like it, and I use it in like, it's almost the only thing you need from Wolfspell to play Wolfspell is this behold the world, and you roll and you determine if you can see the world through these very human-like questions or these very wolf-like senses. The way that those leading questions formulate the world itself in play, it's exquisite. Like it's one of my favorite technologies, that if we can call them technologies, mechanics. I don't know. We don't have good words for this. we use words, but they're not. They should have sent a poet.
But unfortunately, they have two game designers. So
yeah, right.
So I guess the question is like, okay, we have suites of tools that we're both comfortable with, that we like to use for creating or implying or giving tools to players to create setting. There's this whole other game design tradition of, the lore write-up that has its own technologies about like, communicating what do play, like that's always a challenge, right? Like like you assume that the person who bought the book, who's probably the GM or the DM, read it and is bestowing the knowledge onto the table. And so like what tools do those books give people to then get other people up to speed, right? And that's like one pagers or like summaries and stuff like that. And I'm sure there are more evocative and useful tools that I don't know about because I don't have a lot of those games because they're big books full of setting that I'm not going to read. And that's a failing of my own. But that is a thing. And it's like, is there stuff in that space that is worth exploring either as a challenge just to like get out of our own ruts, or as finding something productive to bring back into like the kind of stuff that we're more comfortable with
in the waning years of the 20th century, as the previous millennium was winding down, the penultimate millennium,
for all we know.
For all we know. There was a game originally published by Pace Setter and then Mayfair Games, Chill. It's a horror game. It was a formative game for me. Chill had lovely setting stuff. Like I mean, I have very fond memories of reading through Chill's setting material, and it had an advantage because it is exactly what I was kind of talking about before, where it's like that classic horror mystery role-playing style of doing horror, right? Like you're somehow a group of protagonists that have to figure out what is the supernatural entity behind these bad things that are happening, and to figure out a way to get rid of it. Chill had this setting. In their setting, there was a secret society of people who went around the world trying to root these things out. This is probably going to sound close to Hunter the Reckoning anyways, right? Like, anyways, because it is this mystery thing and you're supposed to discover the supernatural elements of the world, the setting is supposed to be hidden from you until you reveal it, right? Like there's certain parts of the setting that you do know about. You're part of this secret society, and maybe you have some general ideas that vampires exist or something like that, but like you need to find out more before you can do the thing you want to do. They had at least one of their books, I think it was the Apparitions book, which is just all about like poltergeists and ghosts and things like that. The way they presented each of the supernatural monsters is I'm trying to remember. I can go over and grab the book. Give me 1 second. 1 second. I know it's a podcast, but I just want to state I love how the covers are just and the interior art is just these like good, gross looking people.
There's a little of the I think the artist is well known. The Scary Stories to read the
Yes.
dark
Yeah,
guy
it has that
or
vibe.
person.
Yeah.
It has that visual kind of vibe on the interior stuff. Yeah.
Joe DeValesco is the name of this artist. Okay, so you would roll, and you would be rolling against one of your researching skills. I don't off the top of my head remember what they are, but how well you rolled determined whether you got to read the medium's introduction. A medium as in like a spiritualist of some sort, an eyewitness account, the medium's conclusion, and the medium's recommendation about these monsters. So it was like, a low roll, and you just got like a couple paragraphs with a little bit of a background of what the monster should be like. You do a little better, and you get to read like one eyewitness's account of an encounter with this creature.
Mm-hmm.
And if you roll even better, then you've got like a medium that's like, this is what I think is going on, blah, blah, blah. And then if you roll the highest, then you even get like, this is what you should do to take care of this monster. And I think that's a wonderful way to present the setting, right? Like it gives you a role focuses people, right? Obviously, anytime you roll in a role-playing game, everyone kind of sits up a little bit more, because something's happening.
Yeah, see what's going to
That's why we're rolling, and but in addition to focusing people, it presents this setting material as a reward, right? So you're like, give me the juicy reward instead of like, before we play, you need to read this book. That's homework. That's and like the same material presented in those two different ways is going to be received two different ways. So anyways, I've always loved that about how Chill, particularly this supplement of Chill, presented this sort of the setting material. And it's something that I am stealing whole cloth for something that I'm working on right now, because I'm like, I want to be able to like make this a fun thing to get, right?
So this gives me an idea.
Oh, good. See, we're getting to it.
Well, so part of the challenge too, right, is so in this model, it's still, I'm an investigator. I'm this Chill protagonist. I'm doing a thing. I'm making a roll, and then like the GM is saying, "Oh, you did this. Okay, so here's the thing that now you know," and like reading to me out of the book, right, or handing it to me, I suppose, to read. I'm thinking, because part of the transmission issue, right, is the whole like all the text is in the book and someone has to read that and then move it on. So this combined with some of the other stuff we've been talking about recently, I thought I had earlier in while you were talking was like, is there something in here's the game, and like the person running the game also does not read part of it until a certain threshold is met, so it becomes a discovery for everyone. Oh, that's good. So there's that, but then I'm like, what if in terms of making it easier, the setting is decks of cards, and when you do a thing, then you get to, maybe they're pre-stacked, right? And so you get to turn over cards, or you get to draw them and hold them and then reveal them when like you are sharing information with the group or something like that. And getting away from the model of like, here's a book and someone reads the book and then hands out the book. Yeah. And is more of a shared play space thing.
I like the deck of cards thing, because you could do something with this. All right, let's ignore. Hold on, just turning off publisher brain for a moment.
Like how would we make it? Like, what? Turn that part off. Yeah.
So a pre-stacked or relatively pre-stacked deck of cards, because maybe you could be like, take this and shuffle these, and then take these and shuffle. Much like our homework from like 3 or 4 episodes ago, the one that was based on Quiet Year,
the Shrike.
Yeah. But also, if you had on the backs of the cards information about like who amongst the players might be more likely to be able to draw this card. Like it could be an interesting thing, like where it's like,
or it's kind of like the stuff on the back is like, well, everyone knows this.
So everyone knows this or whatever.
But there's a couple different models, right? But if it's like the stuff on the back is like, well, everybody knows that like don't go to graveyards after midnight because like there's spooky stuff there. But then
too many cats.
Yeah. But then if you're the, I don't know, the maybe there's one of them that has like a thing where it's like, well, if you're the occult detective, or you have the occult investigation skill at this level or something, then you get to keep the card and read the stuff that's on the other side, which is like more details or whatever, and you can choose to share that, or it becomes something else that you can use. And there's like, maybe there's different ones for different people.
If we want to be cruel about it, and I think we do.
And you do, yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be fun if you had like along the bottom or somewhere on the back, you had a bunch of symbols, and those symbols indicated character types or whatever, or other cards that people had collected. Actually, that's actually kind of cool. And if nobody has a matching symbol, you have to burn the card without reading the back. So it's a world that reveals itself, but like parts of the world literally cannot be revealed to you unless you've done it.
I guess the soft option for that, I guess, is you put it back in the box or whatever. Like, it's just not on the table.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that's what people would do with it. But I would love.
Well, it's a legacy game where if at the end of each like session or whatever, anything that has not been revealed or taken has to get discarded, and then you'll never know what was on them.
Yeah, you must live with this mystery.
Yeah,
that's fun. That's juicy.
Right. So I think I'm happy to sit with that idea for a little while.
See, this is what we're doing this for. I would ask our listeners for a little help here. 6 months from now,
assuming there is a 6 months from now.
6 months, yeah. Assuming we're even counting in months anymore. When Nathan and I talk about this game as if, and we're still like trying to figure out how we're going to challenge each other to make a game, but also we're talking about publishing this game. Please let us know that we did it. And that's what we're doing. Like, if we get excited about this and then like we'll forget that it satisfied our challenge. Let's pick a question. Let's read it on the air, and then we'll tune in next time and bring our answers next time. These are juicy, but we need to actually they're juicy.
How about the constraints one? I think that's a good cliffhanger-y one to think about for a little while.
Yes. This came from the Discord. From I'm just going to ask on the Discord for the
we both just tried and both just did not think we were saying it right. So Discord member Matthew, thank you for your question. We apologize for not being able to figure out your name. We will ask on the Discord.
Yeah. So the question is, what have been your most productive constraints? Either to constrain your design or to constrain the players during play. That is either constraints for writing the game or constraints written in the game. Constraints are a vital part of game design. I would love to talk. I'd like spend an episode talking about constraints. So let's think about this. And
I think the short answer, not short answer, some short context, right, is I think as anyone who's done any kind of creative thing, constraints are critical. Sometimes they're external, right, in terms of like an assignment in a class and you have to complete it by the next meeting of the class or something like that. Sometimes they are financial, like you're doing a thing and you only have so much money to spend on it. And sometimes like for client work, there's constraints because you need to fit your work into the vision of the person who is hiring you to do your part of it. So there's lots of like different places for them to come from. And I don't think we necessarily need to talk about like, and the question is not asking us to, but just to table set, we don't need to talk about whether they're valuable because they are.
Yeah, they are. So, I think it'll be good. We'll make the next episode our constraints episode.
Our spicy episode.
Yeah.
All right. We have a question about playtesting that I think is also worth expanding on at length. I feel like there's a two-parter question here from a friend of the show, Kevin Allen Jr. Where do people look for games? Like, what does the game discovery landscape look like? I don't have a whole lot to say about that. But then what does the discovery process mean for creators? I feel like has a little more juice to it that we might take a little longer to talk about.
Well, maybe we can make both these part of the next episode. If we ask our listeners, where do you go to find new games right now? Like, what's your thing? Like, because I am definitely curious about that.
I don't have a whole lot to say about it because I like, yeah, because my process is like the people I already know and the games they put out.
Yeah,
Which is not great. And now like Blue Sky, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're both a little passive where, I have I love, what's the word I'm looking for? Again, very warm, nostalgic feelings for like going into weird stores that aren't role-playing game stores in the 80s, like a cigar shop that sold role-playing games, or Walden Books at the mall, or, that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, Walden Books was where I got when I was like first getting games. Like they were all from Walden Books. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like obviously ads in Dragon Magazine and things like that. And then going to conventions and finding games at conventions. And then somewhere in this millennium, that turned partly because I was selling my own games. I just knew a bunch of people who were writing, making games. I went from like looking outward in to being like a colleague and like everyone talking about everything that was coming out. And now I'm like, so it's such a passive process for me now, where before it was a hunt.
Yeah.
It was a thing I would seek through, and I missed the hunt. I missed the thrill of the hunt. That said, I also need to get in front of audiences, and I don't know, I know Itch is a place that a lot of people go. I tend not to sell well on Itch. I am on Itch, but like most of my sales come through TTRPG. Maybe there's a lot of people on there as well.
Yeah, I think this is like the part I have more to say about is what does it mean to try and get in front of an audience, and what are the platforms available, and like how does that work in the current media landscape? So I'm gonna defer that, I think, to talking about in our next episode.
I was just thinking maybe we should spend a couple episodes just asking people to let us know at the end of it, and then we'll do like a little bit more of a
roundup kind of
roundup. Yeah. So
yeah. Okay. So yeah, I guess call to listeners.
Yeah.
So yeah, where are you finding about games?
Which is not necessarily where you're buying them. Like I want to know where you're discovering them. Like
so you can let us know in the Discord on our Blue Sky. As I mentioned earlier, you can send us an email at provost@unwrittenearth.com would be that email. And we will try and articulate some of our findings, because I feel like there's no I don't think anyone's going to be like, oh, go here, right? Like there's no go to the game store. Like that's not.
Yeah. There's no good answer. Or sorry, there's no universal answer.
Yeah. There's no universal answer. But like, right now my answer is like, well, I'm on people's mailing lists and I follow people on Itch and Kickstarter, and that's where I see new projects usually. But I don't have a good way of expanding out of the people I already follow. So like, where is that coming from?
I would like to also note that like we don't have the capacity to do like an actual market analysis, which is fine. But what that means is like, if you have a great personal anecdote about this,
sure.
if you have like a friend that just tells you about all of them, or if you have like a good local game store or whatever, we'd love to hear about that.
You're in a random Discord that is like actually really good at telling you about new stuff.
We'd love to hear about that. Like this is coming both from publishers who want to be in front of people, but also from gamers who just, like I said, I love the hunt. I want to feel again.
Sure.
I just want to feel again.
I feel something that isn't despair. Feel something that's exciting. I will say that the Rascal News press release thing is really good. It's very easy to use, and also a wide variety of people post their projects there. So, I'm not sure if you can subscribe just to that. But you can subscribe, you can be a free subscriber to rascal.news, and they send out a roundup and stuff. A lot of it is, announcements of Kickstarters and stuff like that. Yeah. But like people post things there that are not people who are in my usual circles. So I definitely see stuff there that I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm not really great at following up on all of those necessarily, but it is a place that's just like a big list of new things that people are doing in a way that I feel like I haven't had in a long time. Get over to rascal.news and there's stuff there. We have no affiliation. I mean, I've posted stuff there. I've gotten pretty, I get traffic from posts there when I have new things. So like, I feel pretty good about it.
That's good.
It out.
Yeah.
And I'll link that in the show notes as well.
Should we put an end to this?
I suppose we should.
Lovely discussion.
Yeah, I think this is about where we want to be with our episodes. So this has been the Unwritten Earth Symposium podcast. It is a podcast that is done by us. Yay, us.
Yay, us.
You can support the podcast over at Patreon, patreon.com/unwrittenearths. In addition to the warm glow of supporting some of your favorite game designers, we also post plus expenses there, which is the after show for this show, where we talk for another hour about other stuff, but also sometimes still more game stuff. But we also, that's where we do a little more like personal talk, and also in the weeds, like here's something I'm working on right now, kind of like shop talk kind of stuff. Where
we let our hair down, where our hair lets us down.
Yeah, it's after dark. Yeah, we can get a little spicier. We don't get particularly spicy.
No.
I let Epi curse. That's what After Dark means. So that's basically a whole second podcast that goes out to all patrons, regardless of level, and comes out every week in between these ones. So if you're a patron, that means you get a weekly dose of what we're doing, as opposed to the public bi-weekly dose. And it keeps what we're doing here ad-free and available to everyone. So you can also check that out over on the Patreon with a 7-day free trial and listen to our, as many as you'd like. Listen to our back episodes of Plus Expenses and see if that's something you feel like is worth throwing us $3 a month for. So I will just mention that here because I realized that I never talk about why you might want to be on the Patreon.
Right. No, that's good. Yeah.
Also, that's where Pet Crimes is going to go.
Yeah.
When it's done. Also, you get to subscribe in advance to the annual. More about that later. Anyway, patreon.com/unwrittenearths. All the links to everything are on unwrittenearths.com.
You should mention the music.
Well, I was leading up to the music.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'll let you get your patter in.
You're doing the good work of keeping me honest. And of course, our music is by Will Yobst. You can find Will everywhere the internet is sold at will.com. And also over at the Brain Trust Discord, which is the other place I find out about games, where Will and Adam Vass, author of Necronautilus, previously talked about, have their Discord. Braintrust.rocks, I think, will get you to the link to the Discord. And that's the other place where people are talking about games that I find out about new games. So plug for the Brain Trust. I think that's all my patter. Do I have any other patter?
I think you got it.
Okay, very good. The only remaining question.
Yes.
Epi, have we designed a game yet?
Ooh, we're getting there. Not yet.
We've taken one step on the road to maybe making a game.
Every journey begins with one step maybe that might continue down the road.
Right.